"Son, that was just an understandable mistake on your part," the saint regarded me kindly. "Run along and don't reproach yourself. The beloved mother is taking care of me." He pushed his dangling arm into its stump, and lo, it adhered. The blood inexplicably ceased to flow. "Come to me under yonder tree in 3 days, and you will find me fully healed. Thus you will feel no remorse." Yesterday my brother officer and I went eagerly to the designated spot. The sadhu was there and allowed us to examine his arm. It bore no scar nor trace of hurt. "I am going via Rishikesh to the Himalayan solitudes." The sadhu blessed us as he departed quickly. "I feel that my life has been uplifted through his sanctity." The officer concluded with a pious ejaculation. His experience had obviously moved him beyond his usual depths. With an impressive gesture he handed me a printed clipping about the miracle, in the usual garbled manner of the sensational type of newspaper. Not missing, alas, even in India, the reporter's version was slightly exaggerated. It indicated that the sadhu had been almost decapitated. Amar and I lamented that we had missed the great yogi who could forgive his persecutor in such a Christ-like way. India, materially poor for the last 2 centuries, yet has an inexhaustible fund of divine wealth. Spiritual skyscrapers may occasionally be encountered by the wayside, even by worldly men like this policeman. We thanked the officer for relieving our tedium with his marvelous story. He was probably intimating that he was more fortunate than we. He had met an illumined saint without effort. Our earnest search had ended, not at the feet of a master, but in a coarse police station, so near the Himalayas and yet in our captivity. So far, I told Amar, I felt doubly impelled to seek freedom. Let us slip away when opportunity offers. We can go on foot to holy Rishikesh. I smiled encouragingly. But my companion had turned pessimist as soon as the stalwart prop of our money had been taken from us. If we started a trek over such dangerous jungle land, we should finish not in the city of saints but in the stomachs of tigers. Ananta and Amar's brother arrived after 3 days. Amar greeted his relative with affectionate relief. I was unreconciled. Ananta got no more from me than a severe upbraiding. I understand how you feel, my brother spoke soothingly. All I ask of you is to accompany me to Banaras to meet a certain sage and go on to Calcutta to visit our grieving father for a few days. Then you may resume your search here for a master. Amar entered the conversation at this point to disclaim any intention of returning to Hardwar with me. He was enjoying the familial warmth, but I knew I would never abandon the quest for my Guru. I partly entrained for Banaras. Here I had a singular and instant response to a prayer. A clever scheme had been pre-arranged by Ananta. Before seeing me in Haridwar, he had stopped in Banaras to ask a scriptural authority to interview me later. The Pandit and his son also had promised Ananta that they would attempt to dissuade me from becoming a sannyasi. Ananta took me to their home. The son, a young man of ebullient manner, greeted me in the courtyard. He engaged me in a lengthy philosophical discourse, professing to have a clairvoyant knowledge of my future. He discountenanced my idea of being a monk. You will meet continual misfortune and be unable to find God if you insist on deserting your ordinary responsibilities. You cannot work out your past karma without worldly experiences. Immortal words from the Bhagavad Gita rose to my lips in reply. Even he with the worst of karma, who ceaselessly meditates on me, quickly loses the effects of his past bad actions. Becoming a high-souled being, he soon attains perennial peace. Know this for certain, the devotee who puts his trust in me never perishes. But the forceful prognostications of the young man had slightly shaken my confidence. With all the fervor of my heart, I prayed right here and now, if thou dost desire me to lead the life of a renunciant or a worldly man. I noticed a sadhu of noble countenance standing just outside the compound of the Pandit's house. Evidently he had overheard the spirited conversation between the self-styled clairvoyant and me, for the stranger called me to his side. I felt a tremendous power flowing from his calm eyes. Son, don't listen to that ignoramus. In response to your prayer, the Lord tells me to assure you that your sole path in this life is that of the renunciant. With astonishment as well as gratitude, I smiled happily at this decisive message. Come away from that man, the ignoramus was calling me from the courtyard. My saintly guide raised his hand in blessing and slowly departed. That sadhu is just as crazy as you are. It was the hoary-headed Pandit who made this charming observation. He and his son were gazing at me lugubriously. I have heard that he too has left his home in a vague search for God. I turned away. To Ananta, I remarked that I would not engage in further discussion with our hosts. My discouraged brother agreed to an immediate departure. We soon entrained for Calcutta. Mr. Detective, how did you discover I had fled with 2 companions? I vented my lively curiosity to Ananta during our homeward journey. He smiled mischievously. At your school, I found that Amar had left his classroom and had not returned. I went to his home the next morning and unearthed a marked timetable. Amar's father was just leaving by carriage and was talking to the coachman. My son will not ride with me to his school this morning. He has disappeared, the father moaned. I heard from a brother coachman that your son and 2 others dressed in European suits boarded the train at Howrah station. The man stated they made a present of their leather shoes to the cab driver. Thus I had 3 clues: the timetable, the trio of boys, and the English clothing. I was listening to Ananta's disclosures with mingled mirth and vexation. Our generosity to the coachman had been slightly misplaced. Of course, I rushed to send telegrams to station officials in all the cities that Amar had underlined in the timetable. My brother went on. He had checked Bareilly, so I wired your friend Dwarka there. After inquiries in our Calcutta neighborhood, I learned that cousin Jatinda had been absent one night, but had arrived home the following morning in European garb. I sought him out and invited him to dinner. He accepted, quite disarmed by my friendly manner. On the way, I led him unsuspectingly to a police station. He was surrounded by several officers whom I had previously selected for their ferocious appearance. Under their formidable gaze, Jatinda agreed to account for his mysterious conduct. I started for the Himalayas in a buoyant spiritual mood, he explained. Inspiration filled me at the prospect of meeting the masters. But as soon as Mukunda said, during our ecstasies in the Himalayan caves, tigers will be spellbound and sit around us like tame pussies, my spirits froze. Beads of perspiration formed on my brow. What then, I thought, if the vicious nature of the tigers be not changed through the power of our spiritual trance? Shall they treat us with the kindness of house cats? In my mind's eye, I already saw myself the compulsory inmate of some tiger's stomach, entering there not at once with the whole body, but by installments of its several parts. My anger at Jatinda's vanishment was evaporated in laughter. The hilarious explanation on the train was worth all the anguish he had caused me. I must confess to a slight feeling of dissatisfaction. Jatinda too had not escaped an encounter with the police. Ananta, you are a born sleuth-hound. My glance of amusement was not without some exasperation. And I shall tell Jatinda I am glad he was prompted by no mood of treachery as it appeared, but only by the prudent instinct of self-preservation. At home in Calcutta, Father touchingly requested me to curb my roving feet until at least the completion of my high school studies. In my absence, he had lovingly hatched a plot by arranging for a saintly Pandit, Swami Kebalaనంద, to come regularly to the house. The sage will be your Sanskrit tutor, my father announced confidently. Father hoped to satisfy my religious yearnings by instructions from a learned philosopher, but the tables were certainly turned. My new teacher, far from offering intellectual aridities, fanned the embers of my God aspiration. Unknown to Father, Swami Kebalaనంద was an exalted disciple of Lahiri Mahasaya. The peerless Guru had possessed thousands of disciples silently drawn to him by the irresistibility of his divine magnetism. I learned later that Lahiri Mahasaya had often characterized Kebalaనంద as Rishi or illumined sage.